Okay, incident notification and escalation. All right, we need to be able to quickly assess and triage. Okay, we talked about triage just a few moments ago. We need to make sure we have the ability to do that quickly and as appropriate. All right, so depending upon the nature of the attack, different groups may need to be notified. All right, if it's something small or something that we can handle internally that doesn't have much of an impact, there's really potentially not a need to identify or to notify, the head of the department, the VP, et cetera, et cetera. But depending upon the type of company that we are we local, are we federal, are we a state-run agency, government, so on and so forth, well, then we may have a different set of procedures that we have to follow. Okay, a little more stringent. Is our systems protecting some type of critical infrastructure? All right, again, much more stringent. So we have to understand what teams need to be notified, whether it has to go up the chain up to the CIO or the CISO, okay, the Chief Information Security Officer, whether we have to identify human resources or our public information office or public affairs, legal team, social media teams, etc., etc. If we are a service provider, as an example, and we have some type of breach that takes down our customers' access, or perhaps customer information has been siphoned off, all right, basically some potentially personally identifiable information, or PII. Well, then all of these teams would really be kicked into action, including the legal team, so that we can understand how to word things, how to word our press releases, how to make sure that we do things in a very legally sound fashion that don't open you up for liability down the road. Because again, depending upon that nature of that breach, there's a good possibility that there will be some type of legal action or legal ramification coming down the line. So you want to do as much as possible to mitigate and then protect yourself if and when those situations happen. Okay, social media teams is another good example that they kind of get fired off and put into place so they can now start to do some type of damage control and perhaps put information out to the public in a very controlled fashion, saying, hey, we understand there's a problem, we recognize it, we're working around the clock to fix it, and here's our latest update. And perhaps every 10-15 minutes or once an hour or whatever the case might be is appropriate, those teams will release information out to social media to help quell some of customer frustrations and so forth. Additionally, we may need to notify outside agencies. All right, again, depending upon the nature of our own business. If we're some type of organization that relies on or has, I should say, dealings with critical infrastructure, then we may very well need to notify law enforcement if we have any type of breach. Okay, it could be local, state, or federal. If we're a U.S. government agency, we may need to contact U.S. CERT, or the United States Computer Emergency Readiness Team, and they may have people that would respond to our incident and actually start collecting data and so forth. All right, so we can go to uscert.gov and get some information. Now, again, there are some plans put in place or some guidelines we can use for our own agencies, even if we don't have that same level of requirements around what we do. But you can also go to US CERT as an example and register your email address to get alerts and updates. So it's not a bad idea just to become aware of what's out there, especially if you're in the security space, because they will release periodic alerts and roll-ups and so forth to let you know what vulnerabilities and what types of potential threats are out there. So not a bad idea to go and register for that. And then we have to make sure we understand communication and the actual best method and the best process to do that. All right. So what happens if our internal email system is compromised? Well, as we mentioned, if our entire business runs off of email and we have no other way of communicating, and then our email system is compromised, we're kind of dead in the water. All right. We want to make sure that we have some other way of communicating, whether it's two tin cans and a string. I don't know what's most appropriate for your agency, smoke signals if you have to, but you have to get that information out to people internal to your company and also to your customers. All right, so you may need to establish out-of-band communication methods. In other words, not tied to your typical corporate communication channels. It may be just a voicemail system that people can call into. It could be a bulletin board. Literally pen and paper where somebody goes in once an hour and posts an update on a board. Okay, something that at least can get some information out to internal and also to external customers. All right, and then we also need to identify the location of your war rooms so that everyone knows where they need to respond to in the event of some type of incident. Right? It's very important that those things get set up ahead of time so you're not scrambling for locations, for resources when the actual incident is in kind of full crisis mode. All right, so a centralized location for information dissemination, whether it be voicemail, websites, social media, etc., etc.